Well, I start off with sweetening. One commodity.
To walk with me when darkness was on.
The luxury. Even so, the frontiersman had a sweet tooth, and such dainties as pies and cakes and candies were part of the holiday fare at times of celebrating. Since transportation of sugar for any distance was about as costly and prohibitive as salt, it behooved the settler to fall back upon his natural environment for this condiment. The two principal sources were maple sugar and honey. The Indians taught the early settlers how to tap the maple trees, secure the sap, and boil it down into a syrup for use on their pancakes and in cooking. In many sections of Appalachia today, the maple syrup industry is a thriving business. Vermont is noted for its maple sugar industry. West Virginia has many localities where the processing of the syrup is a thriving trade. The mountaineer searched for the forest for a bee tree. This would provide him with a source of honey, and if skillful, he could capture the swarm of bees, take them back to his cabin, and set up housekeeping in a bee gum which he would provide. The one who found a bee tree automatically became the owner of the honey. When the time came to cut the tree to harvest the honey, it was his right to do this regardless of whose land the tree was on. This tradition is still followed in many parts of Appalachia. The bee gum was a primitive type of hive made from a trunk of a black gum. Because black gum roots from the center outward, an old trunk would provide the necessary shelter with very little effort in remodeling it for the bee. Oh, now listen to this. Backwoods remedies. Many plants in one part or another provided the basic ingredients that were used in the preparation of medicines for the backwoods. There seemed to be a belief among the early settlers that the more distasteful or obnoxious a concoction was, the more effective it would be. Some of their remedies are still used today in patent medicines. Wild cherry bark for cough medicine is one example. The principal ailments of the early settler included a variety of stomach troubles. Inasmuch as the diet of the mountain men left much to be desired, a diet which included fat back and sow belly along with many other greasy items, there is little wonder that they had any stomach at all. Sassafras, catnip, horehound, and pennyroyal were all brewed into teas. The leaves and twigs of red cedar were boiled and inhaled for bronchitis. White and black willow leaves and bark were made into a tea to break up a fever. Bloodroot, golden seal, wild ginger, and the corn of the jack in the pulpit were used in a variety of concoctions. The pitch from the white pine healed wounds and sores. Powdered bark of the hemlock was used to staunch the flow of blood from a cut. Tannin in the bark of the hemlock was good for burns. Cooked pine needles were used for toothache. Rhododendron oil was used for rheumatism. Whether these remedies were effective or not is not recorded. Who dared to get sick with all that facing them? Now, renewable resources. Appalachian wildlife. The term wildlife here is used in the broad sense to include all forms of animal life which are native to the Appalachian region. This does not necessarily mean that all forms of animal life were of direct interest to the frontiersmen. In fact, those animals which were of interest to the mountain men could be placed into one of three groups. The first of these was the fur bearers. Another group would be those used for food, while a third group was also of interest in that they were either feared or avoided by the frontiersmen. The fur bearers. It was the early trappers in their quest for furs who penetrated the wilderness, who crossed the Alleghenies, who migrated through Cumberland Gap to open routes of communication between the eastern coast and the Ohio Valley and later the Mississippi Valley. As the supply of furs decreased, they pushed further westward, trapping, hunting, and fighting Indians. Although many species of fur bearers were trapped, the one in greatest demand was the beaver. The beaver is the largest rodent in North America. It ranges from 30 to 50 pounds. Before the white man arrived in what is now West Virginia, beavers probably occupied every stream that offered suitable habitat. Their principal foods are the bark and twigs of the serviceberry, willow, black cherry, yellow birch, and alder, although they will feed on any deciduous tree and even on evergreens. Beaver pelts are prepared by stretching the skin across a circular hoop made from a slender willow branch. The diameter of the hoop is determined by the size of the pelt. The largest grade for the pelts ranges from 65 inches or over. After the pelts are dried, they are removed from the hoops and stacked. The trappers usually transported their stack of furs on horseback or canoe to the trading station or the market. The Indians trapped only those beaver for their immediate needs. The arrival of the white man increased the importance of the beaver to the Indians, for pelts could be traded for practically anything the white man had. This stimulated the Indians to trap more beaver. By 1600, Virginia traders were buying furs from the Indians as far west as the Blue Ridge Mountains. In 1748, the Ohio Company of Virginia was formed with a large storehouse containing 4,000 English pounds worth of trading goods located at Wills Creek, where Cumberland, Maryland now stands. By 1753, explorations had penetrated West Virginia and western Pennsylvania. The French and Indian War was the outcome of a struggle between the French and the British for trading posts along the Ohio River. During the Revolution, the fur trade declined temporarily, but after 1783, it again became big business. By 1825, the beaver had declined in West Virginia until it was no longer commercially practical to trap. By the early 1900s, the beaver was declared extinct in West Virginia. During 1933 and 34, the West Virginia Conservation Commission secured 14 beaver from Michigan and Wisconsin and released them in Randolph, Webster, and Pocahontas counties. Within the next 5 years, 50 additional beaver were released in several other counties. By 1947, a total of 340 beaver colonies were accounted for throughout the state. The first trapping season, inaugurated in 1948, resulted in the trapping of 135 beavers. Although the beaver was the most sought after of the fur bearers, there were other species of wildlife trapped for their furs. The forests of Appalachia were rich in many of these animals. Among the more desirable fur bearers were the muskrat, mink, gray fox, raccoon, otter, opossum, and the fisher. It is thought that the wolverine may also have occurred in West Virginia. Even the black bear, hunted for its meat and fat, provided a fur that was much in demand for the shakos worn by King George's palace guards. Muskrat were probably more plentiful than beavers. They are still to be found along many mountain streams and in swamps where they build their dome-shaped houses. Many a youngster has bought his first rifle with the money he made trapping the muskrat. Today in Appalachia there are two different kinds of foxes, the gray and the red. Both of these are native to North America, but at the time the white man came to the eastern shores of the new continent, the red fox was found in the Rocky Mountain region and did not reach that part of the country east of the Mississippi. The English gentleman brought with him the tradition of fox hunting, and with it the red fox for their hunts. The red fox of eastern North America today are the descendants of those which were introduced by the early colonists. The woodland buffalo, hunted for its flesh as well as its hide, was a different species from that of the plains bison. It was larger, darker, and lacked the hump of the bison. They roamed the eastern mountains in large herds, moving northward and southward as the seasons changed. They followed well-defined trails which later served for the location of highways. U.S. Highway 50, which runs through West Virginia from Parkersburg to the Maryland border at Red House, was supposed to have been stamped out by thousands of these animals en route to Salt Licks. The last buffalo to be killed in West Virginia was shot at Valley Head, Randolph County, in 1825. The Fisher, a member of the weasel family, was last recorded in West Virginia in 1863. It was restocked in 1969 through the introduction of 25 animals secured from New Hampshire and released in Tucker and Pocahontas counties. At one time, the fur of the Fisher commanded prices as high as $125 for a pelt. It is hoped that the reintroduction may eventually provide additional income for the trappers in the state. Meat for the table. The early frontiersman frequently lived on meat for extended periods of time. He was able to vary his diet or supplement it with plant foods such as fruits, berries, nuts, roots, and so forth. His provisions usually included a supply of parched corn, but when this was exhausted, he was on the land. Now it was his trusty rifle, which he depended upon for his supply of food. Many accounts of the early settlers emphasize the abundance of game in the Appalachian wilderness. Many of the animals adapted to a woodland habitat undoubtedly flourished. Wild turkey must have been one of the most abundant. As the pioneers cleared the land for settlement and for growing crops, the woodland animals suffered, but others, better adapted for an agrarian culture, began to increase. Early accounts pertaining to West Virginia leave no doubt that the turkey, as well as the grouse, exhibited little fear of man in those days. When John James Audubon visited the Ohio Valley around 1810, he found the area abundantly supplied with game. A wild turkey could be procured in a few minutes. The American Indian made much use of the turkey for food, tools such as awls, weapons such as arrow points,